Hello everybody and welcome back to Language Litigation and Integration Part 5. I've titled this one, It's Cool to Care. And what we're going to do in this one is pick up right where we left off in the last lecture. But we're going to again continue discussing biology, psychology, communities, and cults. And to start, what I want to do is simply review Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And what I want to point out is this is more or less true. I guess the first thing I want to say about research in psychology, frankly, if you can't do theoretical physics, you can't really meaningfully address problems in psychology. It's not me being mean, it's just true. If you don't do theoretical physics, you really don't do theory anything. That's not me being elitism, that's science being real. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs in the context of history, with different societies, with our own society, with an emphasis on our own society. But what I'm going to make the point for the history lesson is that progress is not guaranteed. And we're going to look at what locality in the context of history. And one of the previous lectures we talked about the Sumerians' alphabet being left over literally from our own indigenous, endogenous species on this planet. We don't know literally what they're saying. So when we look at the history of narrative progressing, every day is a new step forward. I would say we're going to challenge that, but we're going to blow that up. I don't think I've blown that up. I think that's well established in the scholarship of historical literature right now. But I'm just going to emphasize that point from my own, in my own words. But Maslow's hierarchy of needs basically says the baseline for any physical organism, what you need to do is you need to have your physiological needs met, right? Eating, sleeping, shelter, that's probably it. Water, and then a sense of safety. And then love and belonging, then personal self-esteem, and then self-actualization. Again, a lot of this, to me, there's no real meaningful, physiological is definitely different than safety, but this is all, to me, psychology. So we'll just have physiology, then psychology. But again, it's not there's tons of logical inconsistencies in that progression of verbiage. But it's more or less true. And you go look at our society with people in poverty, right? I would say the first most important thing as a citizen is to actually understand the law and educate yourself. The first most important thing as a biological organism is to take care of your body. And so to do that, we're going to address the question, what is health? I think there's a ton of bullshit, pathetic, excusive, narrative things regarding, first of all, mental health, and then actually diet and nutrition as well. So what is health? It's nutrition and exercise. And I'm going to make the point, again, I can already hear the pitchforks riling right now, people ready to stone me, but I'm going to make the point, and I'm absolutely scientifically confident, mental illness without pathology or without necrosis does not exist. So what I mean is general anxiety and depression is a state of awareness of people treating you like shit, as opposed to something is wrong. People say it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. You're missing cause and effect precisely incorrectly. But Parkinson's disease, or I think it's Parkinson's, and schizophrenia. If you have a depletion in your myelin sheaths, there's pathology to say this is where the mental illness comes from. So those are certainly real. And then genetic disorders as well, but I don't know if genetic disorders is considered part of necrosis. I don't know. So we're going to address the question, how does biology, psychology, and then language relate individually and communally? Right? How do I just made seemingly a pretty egregious claim that mental illness doesn't exist, right? We're all people, and how many people say they're depressed? How many people say they have anxiety? Millions. But again, I'm going to try to show you that it's just false associations about the experiences you're feeling. And then again, how do we use language to describe that? And then we're going to ask, well, I think this is just a question, we're going to discuss evidence. But this is, I thought it was an interesting question. What happens when you look in the mirror and don't like what you see? How many animal species on this planet can identify themselves in a mirror? Recently saw this online. I think it's about 8. My personal conjecture is it's way more. But, well, you go, like I said, we discussed cults in our last slide. Well, you go into denial. And let's be honest with ourselves. How many people sing to their microwave screen? I do. You do. How many people behave like a total curious little monkey in their own mirror and, oh, look at me. Everybody, right? And so we're just going to ask the question, what happens when you look in the mirror and don't like what you see? From a society standpoint and from an individual standpoint. So now let's address what is health and what is good nutrition and how to exercise properly. So now we're going to address the nutrition and exercise points I want to make. Up first, I kind of tailed off in the first clip. I wrote, when we were doing Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I started talking about poverty and just kind of didn't finish the thought. My point was just that poverty causes crime. That I have good versus bad, cops versus robbers. Those are just kind of like false dichotomies that these narratives present in our society. But the real reason is if you can't feed yourself and you can't feed your family, the simple fact is you're going to be a lot more likely to do something to figure that out. And again, when you live in a society with hilariously stupid bureaucracies, completely incompetent federal bureaucracies, and I'll be talking more about, we're not going to be doing too much law this video, but I'll be talking just about the scientific competence within our own society. But poverty causes crime, that's just a fact. And then what I was going to say was the scientific incompetence is truthfully, it's like a pathetic excuse as a way to not change our behavior, and more so to not even change your behavior, but for people in power or people in positions of direction, like directors of the CDC or FDA, again, as a way to minimize how stupid they look in context of their own personal professional career. But to the biology and to nutrition and exercise, locality and concentration for cellular reproduction and regeneration. And what I want to point out there is that I have plant-based versus meat-based. This is your cell. It has carbs and sugar, 25% protein, and then about 50% healthy fat. So the health is very simple. You simply want to be able to replace this sustenance as efficiently as possible. All right. That's why you're supposed to put butter on bread to not spike your amount of your blood sugar levels. But really, sugar's not a bad guy. We don't dislike sugar. Sugar's sweet. But biologically, it's reactive, right? It causes oxidative stress. You want something that's very predictable in its reaction chains. Digestion and bioavailability matter, words don't. Your body can't hear any words that you're saying. It just has some shape, some structure, and whether you're talking about pathology or just basic health, it's just replacing the molecules that get depleted when you exercise or when you move around. And so, plant-based versus meat-based, this is a very, again, prominent delusional conversation in our society today. Plants are sentient beings, so the only real thing I don't like about a plant-based diet, and I could have some genuine personal ignorance in these levels, or in these conversations. I don't think I do, but I might. But I hate when people say a plant-based diet is a better moral stance than a meat-based diet. I 100% think a plant-based diet is a competent nutritional itinerary, algorithm, way to live your life. I'm personally not a plant-based person. I eat meat. I enjoy meat, like all the meats. But I'm just fucking around. But my point is I think both of these are completely, traditionally, historically, and evolutionary, we are mixivores, I don't know, or herbivore, omnivore, both, whatever that one is, omnivore, but we've always been meat eaters. But my point from a biological and scientific standpoint is the differentiation of your cells, right? If you go read a nutrition book, I want to have a citation, I think it's The Perfect Diet or something. I'll look it up and put it in the description because it's a very good book. I definitely recommend it. The best nutrition book I've read. But the author's a woman. She has 4 different. She talks about the pillars of global health, and it's like fermented food, meat off the bone, the alfalfa, like the ugly bits, I think is the verbiage she used, and one other thing. But that's the correct conversation to have, not plant-based versus meat-based. Are you eating the proper amounts of your macronutrients and vitamins and minerals to digest them, right? That's the whole thing with, vegetable oils are bad. And this is a quote from her book, but nature doesn't make bad oil, or doesn't make, I'm paraphrasing, but doesn't make bad fats, excuse me. And it's completely true, right? You cook something, the heat just denatures the molecule so you can't digest it, therefore causes inefficiency in your body and causes stress, very literal physical stress. And extreme abuse of that causes your stomach cancers and all of these other dysfunctions. But to the locality and concentration, in that book she talks about, and this is uniform over any society and diet, is that like the nutrients, you have stem cells, then those cells differentiate and they take on different structure and shape. The cells of your liver function different than the cells of your heart. That's why you have different medical specialties. But whatever organ needs to replace their cells, the cells are most similar from animals out in the diet, or out in the world, right? Eye cells are typically eye cells, right? A dog is different than a cat, is different than a human, but an eye is a lot closer to an eye than human liver is to a human eye, just to keep it human. And so the shape and structure matter a whole lot more. I definitely wanted to say that because I 100% think you can have a great plant-based diet. But I don't think you can make the scientific argument that it could be. I don't think meat-based is better than plant-based. I don't think plant-based is better than meat-based. I think I know biological differentiation matters to the acceptance in the efficiency of digesting the sustenance. And so that's really what I want to say there. I mean, I think all of biology and health is truly a very simple process. Again, if you're unfortunately born with a genetic disorder, or basically genetic disorder, everything else is choice. But that sucks. But I think that's truly the whole conversation of health. And now for exercise, I mean, again, dude, like I think FitBit, the presence of FitBit as a company, no offense, is again evidence of a pathetic society. Counting steps is literally just breathing. I do want to give credit, I think that's in that book as well. It's the perfect health diet. I can't remember the author's name, excuse me. Very, very good author, very good scientist. But for exercise, you literally just need to, I call it the burn of the lungs. I'm going to be doing a separate series on like literally lifting. But exercise, you just want to, cardiovascular health is again, or cardio versus lifting is bad differentiation. I agree with high intensity interval training. I think that's where you get the lung burn that I just said, and you also, I want to do more personal research into again what I consider good exercise. Again, just move around at aggressive intervals, lifting or otherwise. I mean, with this, I've been an in-gym weightlifter, probably as serious as you can be about lifting without actually competing. I have no interest in competitions, and for what it's worth, I wouldn't be very competitive. I would be lower average at best. But I think like form and posture is what you want to stress at every point in any exercise. And yeah, that's about all I want to say there now. Again, I'm going to do a lot more in-depth stuff with biology and nutrition. But now we'll go back to psychology, and so this is the base level of the physiology of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you can't take this, and now I'll introduce what I call the fat sad problem of our society. I lied. I wanted to make I didn't lie. I left out a couple biological points I wanted to make. First was I didn't say, but when people say for a plant-based diet that you're killing and hurting animals, yes and no. Well, yes, but plants are also sentient beings. So, remember the last lecture we said the difficulty in defining life. If you say plants aren't sentient, the answer to that is no. So try again on the real thing is it's a Homo sapien wanting a bunch of other Homo sapiens and say, oh wow, you're so morally great, you're so awesome, you're the best helper in the world. And you're probably genuinely just fat. Well, we'll get to the fat sad problem, but I'm not done with the biology yet. But how long does it take for a cell to become nutrient deficient? And it depends on what nutrient and what type of cell. But I'd say most estimates or most research that I've reviewed, and it has been a while, so these time frames can be a little off, but it's like 7 to 12 years. Right, when you're reading history and you're reading about malnutrition, I mean, you're talking people are eating 200 calories a week, or just, I mean, like ridiculously lower. Like we have an estimated 2,000 calories per. It definitely ranges per body weight. Again, a body weight mass composition conversation makes a lot more sense than here's a set amount of calories. But it's a lot longer, right? If you've been on a plant-based diet versus a meat-based diet for 6 months, and you say, wow, I feel so much better. There's a 99.99% chance that you ate absolute fucking shit your entire time before that, and eating some amount of nutrients from anything, the argument I just made, makes you feel better. But to make a meaningful scientific assessment of that, there might be studies out there. I mean, I know there was a very popular documentary called, so it's a plant-based, I mean, it was a popular documentary, it's out there. But I didn't watch it, but I watched the Joe Rogan clip with some other guy talking about it. And I agree with some of the points. Well, I think the point I just made came from there. But again, it's true. I mean, I don't need to cite every point that I also rediscover. But I try to. I genuinely try to. My point is again, even 3 years. 3 years on a plant-based diet is not. Versus, again, the base is a meat-based diet, so it's not. I'm not arguing my position of my own diet is better. I'm genuinely being scientifically objective, and you would have to, again, assess cellular deficiencies over about a decade. Because our society, again, in comparison of history, is at the pinnacle of technological development. We have an infinite amount of way to go technologically. And what we can develop to help each other, but what was I saying? I think I just wanted to emphasize that the moral emphasis on the plant-based diet is, one, again, scientifically incorrect about the sentience of plants, and then also completely scientific ignorant to true nutrient deficiencies. But the way that you assess the physical health of a society is the average age. How long till you not die? Oh, but and what I wanted to say is like, okay, so, I have a quote. I have men that regularly live to 120 years. And that's Herodotus again. And that was the king of Ethiopia. And I have a profound sensitivity to language. I am 99.999 repeating percent confident that is absolutely true. So if that is true, that means our bureaucracies, our amazing scientific understanding hasn't progressed at all in 2,500 years. We actually went backwards. right? How could that be? Well, again, remember, you live around a bunch of other people. Whatever they're doing is what is literally the definition of normal. A bunch of people wear a FitBit, breathe a little bit for 5 seconds, count their steps. Now they exercised. No, you didn't. You went from eating complete shit to eating slightly less complete fucking shit. Now you're on a diet. Right? Look at the proliferations of keto diet, caveman diet, vegetarian, vegan. And again, it's not that there isn't merit to a lot of the things, but the proportion of your cell is the proportion of your cell. Your ability to digest nutrients is your ability to digest nutrients. The rest is just kind of garbage, or verbiage. And like I said, I'm scientifically confident that's true. So when people say, like, if someone dies at 90 years old, right now today in our society, people go, well, they lived a nice long life. And they truly did. But if you have people living to 120 years, again, I'm good at math, but not calculations, 1/4, 25%. You just lost 25% of your life because you think 90 is a long time. For real. And again, that is all the base of education. First of all, again, poverty. You can't buy shit, you just do whatever you have to survive. Totally understandable. But past that, it's a society thing, man. And 40% of American adults are fat. Fat as fuck. 40%. 40 fucking percent. 40 fucking percent. 40 fucking percent. You want lower healthcare costs? You want lower taxpayer dollars? You want better sex? You want a better personal life? You want more laughter? Don't be fucking fat. Take care of your fucking health. But I think that is the last of, and again, this is the death that broke the straw that broke the camel's back. Your cellular health is the basis. That is your basis of health. If you're fat, your body can't efficiently your blood can't flow as efficiently as it needs to, as freely as it needs to. You do that for 30, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you're going to think 60, 70, 80 is an old adult, and it isn't. Biologically not. And so now we're going to get into the psychology of this all. And so I have guns in the Chatham Islands. You have some indigenous groups. I don't think there's many anymore. I mean, there was the pariah tribe that I cited in my lectures a while ago. But the point is you have truly industrialization going on through the 1700s, but you still have some island people that are, again, hunter-gatherer, and have not developed technologically at all. And so this really highlights that. Nobody on this planet could argue a gun is not a good hunting technology, a hunting tool. The indigenous people of the Chathams, as a documented fact and historical record, had guns introduced to them from an industrialized, a missionary, somebody. They accepted them into their society for a little bit, and then I want to provide the right citation again. It's somewhere, MSRI has my citations in my books, but they accepted the guns for 5 to 10 years in their society, and then they reverted back to, they stopped using guns for the next 120, 200 years or something. I think those citations, or the time frames might be off. I think it might be closer to 100 years. But the point is that happened. You have a technology that absolutely works, that absolutely accomplishes something beneficial to the group, and people say, nope, we love tradition. We love doing it the old way. Mom or Daddy did it this way. But then you have a pile of dead bodies in your society. Then you have COVID-19. Then you have people living to 80 and people are like, oh my gosh, or 90, oh my gosh, that's so long. Apes, man. It is an evident, overwhelming fact in biology, and again, this is their literature verbiage, not mine, just good enough. You literally want to satisfy on an individual level those hierarchy of needs, and once you have that, sure, you want to give back to your community, and everyone does, but at the same time, not that much. You have to live your own life. And now we'll talk about more psychology things. So now, before we jump into the fat, sad problem, actually I was going to expand on the fat, sad problem a little more. But I mean, there's really not much to say. But literally what I mean is just, if you don't take care of your base level of health, of that base level Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the only words out of your mouth, I want to say you could be overweight and be a nice person. But if you can't take care of your own health, you're still denying and being pathetic to some level. It's just true. You can get mad at me, you can call me a terrible person. I don't fucking care. Because again, keeping people alive longer is the best, the most respectful thing you could ever do. If you lived in a community, not a cult. But it's simply, I wanted to say again, 40% of people, I mean that's profound. 25% are lonely, 40% are fat. It's patheticness, is what that is. And patheticness is a sickness and a disease. But to jump in psychology, how do we not die? Let's just start with that question. How do we not die? Take care of your health, you get your shelter, and you protect yourself. You have defense mechanisms. I would say the primary differentiation from amongst biological organisms is literally their defense mechanisms. Not their shape or form. Again, I'm going to have to do a lot more work in there, but just, I solve more science than you. Listen to me. Not the best I can do anymore. But you have strength in numbers. A lot of people with the same ideas come together, they form groups, and they reinforce those ideas. On a small local scale, 1, 2, 5, however little amount of people you want, to the extreme of literally our entire species with cell phones. In the way that we do that kind of evidently in our society, allegedly, in the ideal, and the thing that we think we accomplish, is with school, right? You go to school, you take an IQ test, and obviously the IQ tests aren't standard in school, but they're pretty standard in psychology. But even more general than IQ tests, you try to hire the people for the most appropriate job. You get the scientists and the brilliant people and the geniuses. There's no us's in genius. It's just genius or not. And if you prove the quantum mechanics measurement problem from first principle with direct logic, maybe that's you. Definitely not me though. Anyway, the point is IQ measures something, but again, guessing patterns is guessing patterns. People learn on a direct, project-based type of deal. You want to learn the guitar, you practice the guitar. You want to learn to lift weights, you lift weights. You want to learn to do math, you do math. You want to measure intelligence, you say, hey, can you solve fundamental problems in theoretical physics? You don't have them guess games. But evidently, I do think IQ differentiates some sort of analytical ability, but what I want to emphasize is that it's variable. You can improve your IQ tremendously. And standard psychologists would say that's not possible. But that's extremely ironic because it's a professional holding back somebody else with their own delusions about science, and they happen to be a psychologist. But they're really just a fucking person. My point to you for groups is we try to take the most evidently intelligent people, whatever that may be, to benefit the rest of our species. There are certainly hiccups all along the ways, many, many times over. But generally that's what we try to do. And so now for the psychology of groups, well, let's look at some groups and some types of people that we have in our society. And I have these just a general Gaussian distribution, and strictly to show, like someone in group 0 would not understand, would understand somebody, would relate to somebody in 1, would maybe look up to somebody in 2, would kind of be perturbed and off-put by somebody in 3, would resent number 4, and then would fucking hate number 5. And then I have question marks over here because this is like, let's say this is an IQ of 200. What happens if you have someone way fucking past that? Well, you're going to get denial, resentment, and hatred from the entire curve of your fucking species. Unequivocally, that's what would fucking happen. Again, truthfully, it's not good or bad, it just is. Species need to survive, they need to find the smartest ones, they need to benefit that technology, and then we look into the mirror and we say, oh, that's probably me. And again, they might be. Go First of all, demonstrate you understand what physics exists, and then prove 100,000 theorems independently. It's pretty simple, honestly. But this is how we associate things. And so what happens when you scare an animal? Well, they either go, they have verbiage right now in our diction today is flight or fight response. And the reason I have these in brackets is because this is a fundamental dichotomistic pair. I introduced that again in one of my previous lectures, but you want a scientific theory with great predictive power? Your literal verbiage, right there. There we go. But when you scare an animal, they go into their flight or flight response. What happens when you scare a group? They do the same thing, with the added benefit of diffusion of responsibility. If you live in a cult, that's going to end up very bad. You speak out against the cult, on the worst scales, they will literally kill you. On the more realistic scales, they'll probably disown you and shame you or shun you. But if you have a community, the people will change. They will modify their behavior, right? IQ and EQ are definitely different, or you can improve them. But if you're in a cult, people will expel you. I mean, that's just what happens. But again, to our society, when we have, again, like depression and anxiety, again, it's not flight or fight. It's be pathetic and then diffuse responsibility and then seek attention at all costs to make yourselves feel like a better moral person. Everyone wants to feel like a good person. But if you can't even take care of your health, and then you're going to go on a social justice warrior campaign. You're going to find the most minute errors in other people's behavior and criticize them the hardest because they're probably in you as well. How many slave owners fucked slaves but denied it? How many homosexuals are married heterosexually? Plenty. Denial at face value because of what your society has told you, to goofy and weird levels where you literally deny your own behavior, right? What happens when you look into a mirror and you don't like what you see? You go into rampant denial, you produce hatred, you produce resentment, and all of that negative energy is towards yourself. But again, okay, so now, right now today, we live in a society where cannabis is not legal. I am professionally calling for the immediate legalization based on biological information that I have presented. I can present more if you'd like. But the simple fact is, again, I don't have the citations here, but dysfunction cannabis cells, or dysfunction cells absolutely produce cannabinoid receptors, 100%. There are literal books about the medical uses of cannabis. And so when you people say, you can laugh, you can get mad at my analogies, I'm over here in what the fuck land on IQ and EQ. The entire psychological resistance to legalization of cannabis is, first of all, what I call the spotlight effect. You can find a million ways people die in society. You can find a million causes you should be helping. But somehow, some way, the one that makes the most sense gets the spotlight. And then you have all of these weird conversations that don't make any sense. This is an old citation, but as of 2014, there were over 250 drugs approved with one iffy FDA study. You can literally buy books on the medical applications of cannabis, and of someone who just does a lot of cannabis has no fucking ability to opine on cannabis legislation, science, blah, 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 past the actual experience. I'm a profoundly read scientist with profound intuition, and I have profound experience with cannabis. It literally has an LD less than water. It is literally less toxic than water. And the reason it doesn't differentiate on, or the reason you don't overdose on cannabis is because the receptor cells don't differentiate on vital organs to shut them down. And so when you look at the risk-reward of cannabis legalization and the society as a whole, the psychological resistance of a group from the 1964 when a bunch of people saw a couple hippies smoke some pot and say, look at the good vibes, bro, because science is fucking real. And then they formed hatred and resentment, and they said, ah. Well, remember, there's always a part of biology that this suffering is acceptable. You can watch somebody else hurt. If you truly think you are the right person, or you truly think they deserve it, you're not going to be that upset about it. Someone robs a building and gets shot, not a single fucking person's like, well, you shouldn't shoot the rob. Well, some people do, but I mean, if you walked into a room with people, someone just raping everyone and shooting everyone, the first thing you're going to do is to have a hero shoot him in the head and move on. But what was I talking about? Oh, cannabis. So we have the risk reward and the biological toxicity of cannabis, and there's no contradictions. I mean, the FDA released guidance. Okay, so getting to the point of the FDA, I recently read a report where the FDA made scientific claims that CBD might damage male testicles and the liver. You literally need to fucking cite any study. If you're going to make a claim like that, you have to cite a literal study. You people do not have the competence to make real biological conclusions. People can push back on me that, please do so. But from the overall, should we legalize cannabis? Should someone walk into the James Cancer Center of hospital and they say, take fucking cannabinoids? Yes, they fucking should. Now, do it.